Every night at exactly 2 a.m., my wife quietly gets out of bed, walks downstairs, and starts talking to someone. At first, I thought maybe she was sleepwalking, or maybe she couldn't sleep and was just talking to herself. But the terrifying part was, we lived alone. There was nobody else in the house. No children. No guests. No neighbors close enough to hear through the walls. Just us. Yet every single night, I would wake up and hear faint whispering coming from downstairs. Soft voices drifting through the darkness while the rest of the house stayed completely silent. It always happened at the exact same time. Never earlier. Never later. 2 a.m. When we first got married, everything felt perfect. She was quiet, gentle, and always smiling in a way that made me feel calm no matter how stressful life became. She loved old books, rainy nights, and sitting in silence with a cup of tea while staring out the window. There was something mysterious about her, but I thought that was part of her charm. The first few weeks of marriage were peaceful. Nothing unusual happened. But slowly, little things started to feel off. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and notice her side of the bed empty. Sometimes she'd return 20 minutes later. Sometimes an hour. Whenever I asked where she went, she'd smile and say she couldn't sleep. I believed her at first. But after it started happening every single night, I began noticing patterns. The same footsteps. The same creaking stair. The same whispering voice floating up from downstairs. One night, curiosity finally got the better of me. I kept pretending to sleep while watching the clock tick closer to 2 a.m. The room was dark except for the faint glow of moonlight slipping through the curtains. The second the digital clock changed to 2 o'clock, she sat up slowly. Her movements felt strangely mechanical, almost rehearsed, like she had done this hundreds of times before. Without saying a word, she climbed out of bed and quietly opened the bedroom door. I waited a few seconds before following her. My heart pounded so hard I thought she might hear it echoing through the hallway. The entire house was dark and cold. Only a dim yellow light glowed from the kitchen downstairs. I stepped carefully down the stairs, avoiding the creaking boards I knew too well. Halfway down, I heard her voice. Soft. Gentle. Whispering like she was deep in conversation with someone standing inches away from her. At first, I couldn't make out the words. Then I heard her laugh quietly. Not a normal laugh. Something nervous, almost affectionate. I slowly leaned toward the kitchen doorway and looked inside. My entire body froze. My wife was standing beside the kitchen table smiling and nodding as if another person stood directly in front of her. But the room was empty. Completely empty. No shadow. No movement. Nothing. I felt ice crawl up my spine as I listened to her whisper into the darkness. No, he still doesn't know, she said softly. A long silence followed, like she was listening to someone respond. Then she nodded slowly. I understand, she whispered back. My breathing became shallow. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to run back upstairs, but I couldn't move. I just stood there staring at her. Suddenly, the kitchen light above her flickered once. Then again. The temperature in the room dropped instantly. I could actually see my breath in the air. My wife stopped speaking. Her smile slowly disappeared. For several horrifying seconds, she stood perfectly still. Then, very slowly, she turned her head toward me. Not her body. Just her head. Her eyes locked onto mine from across the dark kitchen. The expression on her face didn't even look human anymore. Her smile stretched unnaturally wide while tears slowly rolled down her cheeks. And then she whispered the words that still haunt me every single night. He can see you now. The moment she said that, every light in the house went out. Complete darkness swallowed everything. I heard something moving beside me in the hallway. Slow footsteps. Heavy breathing. Like someone tall was standing only inches away from my face. I couldn't see anything, but I could feel it there. Watching me. Smiling in the dark. Then suddenly, from downstairs, my wife began laughing. Loud. Uncontrollable. The kind of laughter that doesn't sound human anymore. My hands shook violently as I reached for the wall trying to find the light switch, but before I could move, I heard another voice whisper directly into my ear. A deep voice. Cold. Rotten. He's finally here. The next night, I couldn't sleep at all. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept hearing that whisper in my ear. He's finally here. My wife acted completely normal during dinner, as if nothing had happened. She smiled at me, asked how work was, even laughed at one of my jokes. But something about her felt different now. Every movement seemed rehearsed. Every smile felt fake. And the worst part was, she never mentioned what happened in the kitchen. Not once. It was like she expected me to pretend none of it had happened. That night, before going to bed, I placed a small voice recorder underneath the kitchen table downstairs. I told myself there had to be a logical explanation. Maybe stress. Maybe exhaustion. Maybe I was imagining things. But deep down, I already knew the truth. Something was in that house with us. Something that only came alive after 2 a.m. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while the clock slowly moved closer to the dreaded hour. 1:58 a.m. 1:59, then finally. 2 o'clock, my wife sat up instantly. The movement was so sudden it almost didn't look natural. Without saying a word, she climbed out of bed and walked toward the bedroom door. I kept my eyes barely open, pretending to sleep while listening to her footsteps disappear downstairs. A few seconds later, the whispering began again. Only this time. There was another sound too. A low voice. Deep. Distorted. Like someone speaking underwater. Every hair on my body stood up. I pulled the blanket tighter around myself and stayed frozen in bed while the voices continued downstairs for nearly an hour. Occasionally, I heard my wife laughing softly. Then silence. Finally, around 3 a.m., I heard her footsteps returning upstairs. She slipped back into bed beside me without saying a single word. Her skin felt freezing cold. The next morning, the second she left the house, I grabbed the recorder with shaking hands and locked myself inside the bedroom. For several seconds, the recording played nothing but static. Then came the sound of footsteps descending the stairs. My wife's voice appeared moments later, soft and calm. "He saw you last night," she whispered. A long silence followed. Then suddenly, another voice answered her. A deep, inhuman voice filled with static and distortion. I know. My blood turned cold. I dropped the recorder onto the floor. The voice didn't sound human. It sounded old, rotten, like something trying to imitate human speech after centuries of silence. Then my wife spoke again. "Is he ready?" Another pause. And then the voice replied. "Soon." The recording ended with a loud scratching noise, followed by 3 slow knocks directly into the microphone. I couldn't breathe. That evening, when my wife came home, I confronted her immediately. I played the recording out loud and demanded to know who she was talking to every night. She didn't even look surprised. She just stood there silently staring at the recorder while the distorted voice echoed through the room. Then she slowly looked up at me. Her expression was completely emotionless. "When I was a child," she said quietly, "I used to talk to something in this house." I felt my stomach twist. She smiled faintly. At first, my parents thought it was imaginary. She stepped closer. But then they started hearing it too. The room suddenly felt colder. I asked her what it was. For a long moment, she said nothing at all. Then she leaned close enough for me to feel her icy breath against my face. And it never left. That night, I tried staying awake. I locked the bedroom door. I turned every light on in the house. But at exactly 2 a.m., the lights downstairs turned on by themselves. The whispering started again. Two voices, quietly speaking in the darkness below. I covered my ears, trying not to listen, but then I heard something new. A third voice. Soft. Weak. Terrified. My voice. I ran downstairs, heart pounding violently, but the kitchen was empty. No wife. No shadows. Nothing. Just the recorder sitting in the center of the table. Still recording. Then behind me, I heard my wife whisper softly from the darkness. He knows you now. And that's when I realized the horrifying truth. My wife was never talking to it anymore. She was introducing me.